Welcome to day 2 of Dynamics Con. Thank you to all of our sponsors for making this event free to our community. Get ready to scale up with our Dynamics and Power Platform superheroes. Be sure to stick around after the sessions to participate in our networking breakout room. Please welcome our first speaker of the day, Audrey Vavrosky, a senior consultant. Today she'll be presenting her session, Work Wisely with XrmToolbox. Please stick around after Audrey's session for a live Q&A.
Hi, welcome to my session. This is Audrey Vavrosky. I work for a partner called MCA Connect, and I'm very thankful to be here today to present some of my best productivity tips from the XrmToolbox tool. Thank you so much for voting for my session. I really appreciate your support, and I'm very thankful to be a superhero today and to be able to share some of the tools that I've been utilizing and my coworkers have been utilizing as well. So without further ado, let's start. The name of my session is Work Wisely with XrmToolbox. Productivity is something that is so important to me as a consultant. Also, my developer coworkers are also using this toolbox quite often. There are plenty of tools to help with data, with customizing, with being able to do some reporting and ensuring that your customizations are being thorough and they're consistent throughout your system. These are a few of the URLs that I'll be walking you through in a minute. Basically, we're going to start with the XrmToolbox website. On that website, there are a few areas we will look at, mainly the plugins, the documentation area, the blog that XrmToolbox has under mscrmtools.com, and also obviously the Twitter handle XrmToolbox. Here we are on the XrmToolbox website. As you see in the toolbar, it is xrmtoolbox.com. If you're not familiar with XrmToolbox, there is a very nice definition right here, and I'll just do a brief summary for you. XrmToolbox is a Windows application that connects to Microsoft Dataverse. And so tools like CE, D365 for Sales, Service, and Talent, they use Dataverse as the foundational data service. The XrmToolbox allows you to make connections to those environments and make bulk customizations. This tool allows you to connect to your CE environments and make changes in bulk. One great thing about this tool is that it's free. So you just get to download it and having it on your work laptop, and you can utilize it for all of your client needs. There is a Twitter handle at XrmToolbox that you can utilize to follow the different changes and the different updates that are happening. Some of the developers developing some of the tools on here are going to be posting on here. So yesterday, as I was building this presentation, I realized that I missed some tools. And so I actually went in and downloaded a few, like the security error message and the flow to Visio tools that I had not heard before. If you go back to the website, there are a few other links I wanted to talk about. There is an external link for the blog that I mentioned earlier, and then also you can look at the tools, the various tools on here. Tools are also called plugins in this instance. They're basically added by various developers. This is open source, and they get to share what they've developed with the rest of the community so that we can all benefit from their development and we can all utilize the CE platform with more productivity. So as you can see here, there are 246 tools and counting. Whenever you download the software, it comes preloaded with a bunch of tools, and then you can hide them, uninstall some, and then add some more. Whenever you utilize the toolbox, you'll notice at the top, there is a filter section where you can have a search bar. You can start typing the name of the tool you're looking for. Maybe you're looking for security or data. You can just start typing that. Or if you remember the name of your tool, you can type that as well. One of the ways that we'll be navigating through the tool today is by going through the various groupings. And so the groupings that are already embedded in the application are comparison, configuration, customization, data, development, documentation, migration, plugins, portal, Power BI, processes, reporting, security, solutions, troubleshooting, and user interface. Now, as you're noticing, a lot of these have overlap. And so a lot of the customization in your system is also going to be processes related or possibly security or solution related. So sometimes some of the groupings have a filter that's not unique for a tool, so a tool might find itself in more than one grouping. These are my top 10 tools. You'll notice when you look at the application, on the right-hand side, you'll see the number of times that I've utilized this tool on this specific laptop. So there is no saying how many other times I've used in my other previous laptops. My top 10 tools are clone field definitions, view layout replicator, metadata document generator, attribute editor, data transporter, activity cascade rules, user role manager, fetch XML builder, view designer, and user settings utility. This might not mean anything to you, and that's why I will go in and show you some of those top tools. And as you can see from a very high level perspective, you see a little bit what I do every day. So I configure the system, I customize the system, I make sure that the business process the client wants is unique and is well built and it's being consistent. And so these are tools that I utilize for pretty much every implementation. The way that I'm going to go through the tools today is by going through the various categories. So let's start with the UI category and the solutions. In the UI, we'll go through the view layout replicator, the view designer, and the iconator. Then for solutions, we'll do the components mover and the transfer tool. All right, and we are here in the XrmToolbox tool. Now, this is probably the first time that you see it. If you have not downloaded it, please go ahead and do that after this call. The first thing you'll want to do is connect to an environment. Over here, there are multiple connection groupings that you can do. So I created one for today called demo. And what I did is I connected this to a demo environment. I went to trials.microsoft.com, made myself a nice little demo environment, and hooked it up here so we can do a demo today together. What you'll do is you'll create your new connection. You can utilize the connection wizard, connection string. Most of the environments nowadays, you can use a connection wizard. You input the URL, you go next, and then you input your username and password, and that's it. You can double click on it and it'll connect. As you see, mine is already connected. At the top of the application in the navigation, you can see here under Windows, there is an option to close the various windows that have been open. That's to basically help you declutter your workspace, as every time you open a tool, it'll keep it open in a tab. The configuration options allow you to manage your collections and to look at the tools library. Let's take a look at the tools library. Upon loading, the various options shown are going to be filtered by the display options you've previously chosen. If you go to display options on the right-hand side of your screen, you'll see that I've already checked that I wanted to show the tools I have not installed and the tools that I need to update. I've also selected the show installed tools because I wanted to ensure that I had everything that I really wanted installed for today's presentation. I'm going to remove this one for now. You can see at the bottom left, you have some statistics. Like right now, there are 210 tools with 153 being new. You can easily query these tools by the release date, the author, and the number of downloads as well. So you can query the system, download the most hot ones, the popular ones, and just learn what's out there in the community. Sometimes when I hear of a new author that I'm looking on Twitter or on the blogs, I will go ahead and look for the author in here and then download their plugins. The categories that I mentioned earlier are also filterable on the left-hand side here. So let's say I wanted to see the various plugins for data that I don't have downloaded. I could go here and I could show the various data ones that I don't have downloaded just yet. It's very simple to download one. You can say, hey, I want the audit history extractor. I just select it and click on install, and that's it. If none of the filters are selected, you can see the whole list of items. Currently, I have various plugins here, and they're sorted by the ones that I've used the most recently. As you can see on the right-hand side, I've used the View Layout Replicator 45 times. So I use this one a lot. All right, let's start with user interface. The View Layout Replicator is the first one I want to talk to you about. After loading entities, you can either search the entity you're looking for, or you can select it over here. So I select my account. And if I look at the All Accounts view, it'll show me a preview of the various view layouts. So that won't be the filtering, it'll just be the columns on your view. So I've got my name, phone, city, and contact. If I look at the inactive contacts, inactive accounts here, you'll notice that the view is different. It has name, primary contact, main phone, and city. That's not consistent with the all accounts. So what I want to do is I want to make sure that the all accounts view has the same columns as the inactive accounts. So I'll select my all accounts view here. And my target view, I will select an active account. If I go to the application, I can show you what that looks like. Under my active accounts in my environment, I've got the columns that I showed you earlier. And if I go to inactive accounts, I have name, primary contact, main phone, and city versus having the main phone next to all accounts. I'll go ahead and click on this. So click on active account and click on save views. And when that is done, I will click on publish entity. This might take a minute depending on how many customizations you've already made in the system. If you come back to your system and perform a hard refresh by clicking on Control F5, it'll clear your cache and refresh your page with the right view. As you notice now, the inactive accounts has the main phone number right after the account name, just like the all accounts view. There you go. That was very fast. I use this tool for every entity that I work with in the system. I want to make sure that all of my views are the same. Really use this for the lookup views, the quick find views, those obscure associated views that you sometimes use, but it's very important to be consistent because the users get confused if their columns are in the wrong orders. The second tool I want to show you is the view designer. This view is similar. If I open the accounts entity and I click on a view, I'm going to go to all accounts. I can see a preview of the XML. If I click on OK and edit XML, I can then copy the XML here into something else, like maybe your Power Automate flow that you're attempting to build. The third tool I wanted to talk to you about right now is the Iconator. This is a fast way to load entities and image and match them up together, create web resources for your various entities or navigation panes that you're creating in your system. You can grab images from your computer if they're in the right pixel formats and associate them to the right entities. And that's just makes your life easier if you have a lot of icons to create in your system. Now that we've talked through the user interface, let's go through solutions. Under solutions, we have the components mover and the solution transfer tool that we'll go through right now. For the solution components mover, what you can do is load your solutions, pick various solution components that are in your source solution and copy them to a target solution. That allows to move components from one solution to the other. So let's say you want to do some sort of a patch or a new solution that you want to start for, bug fixes. You can easily do this, and that'll limit the error that you can make by doing this manually. The solution transfer tool is pretty self-explanatory. It is a way to move a solution from one environment to another. I would typically do this in mid-development. So if between a sandbox environment and a test environment, if we're making small fixes, let's say after a UAT has been kicked off and the users are in the system and there's like a real error that they're experiencing and it's preventing them from continuing with their testing, I might be moving some solutions this way if I'm not using a more robust way of moving solutions. All right, we're going to go through security and processes. And for this area, I will talk through the user role manager and also the bulk workflow execution. All right, under security, there's a user role manager tool that allows you to load the roles, users, and teams. Now, this is a demo environment, so you'll notice there isn't a whole lot. But what I can do is I can select a certain role and select a user. I can see the various actions. I could add a selected role, I could remove a selected role, or I can remove all roles from that user and then apply the selected roles. So that helps a lot when you have a lot of new roles that are being introduced or you're deprecating old roles for your user. We typically use this at the beginning of a user acceptance testing or even when you go live. We also sometimes train the main SME and the system administrator on the client side for them to be able to perform this on their own. A lot of those tools are things that we sometimes even do knowledge transfer to the various clients that we're deploying the solution for. Under processes, there is a bulk workflow execution tool that has been a lifesaver for me. This over here should ring a bell for you. A batch size of 200. And if you think about it, if your personal settings have not been changed in your system, you can really only see 50 records at a time in your advanced find. That makes for a very long all-nighter of running on-demand workflows on your records. with room for error, of course. So this is a wonderful way to use the previous tool we had earlier to copy and paste an XML, put it in here, and select a workflow that you want to run on demand. This environment probably doesn't have anything, but you would select a workflow here. And then after you click on Validate Query, it'll show the record count that is returned from your query. And when you click on Start Workflow, it'll go ahead and apply your workflow in batches of 200. And so it'll cycle through all of your records and automatically run your on-demand workflow. In the migration and documentation categories, I want to talk to you about the data transporter as well as the metadata document generator. It is worth noting that in the migration tools, I've also highlighted a few of the ones that I use a lot when it comes to moving the various templates from one environment to another. There is here the document template mover. That's for your Word and Excel documents, as well as a document template manager, because sometimes those documents have not been saved. They're not easily extractable from the system, so you can extract them from here. And then also the portal records mover, because as you know, when you build a portal, there's so many records that are all intertwined together. And so using this tool allows you to quickly get you started in your next environment. Duplicate rules is another one of them. I typically like to build all of my duplicate detection rules in my development environment and utilize this tool to move my rules over to the next environment. Under migration, you can find the data transporter tool. After you selected your source environment, you can also select your target environment. What you'll do is you're able to select your tables here and then the various attributes that are in that table for things that you want to move to another environment. I typically use this for supporting data. So let's say we're building out countries and states and various, custom entities that might have a listing of colors or listing of categories or groupings or subcategories. Well, these are going to be supporting entities that you're really going to want to utilize in all of your environments. And you're actually going to care about the GUID of those records, because if they're being referenced in a business rule, in a workflow, a Power Automate flow, when those records are migrated to a next environment via this tool, it keeps the GUID intact. It allows you to not have to make any changes to your business rules, your Power Automate flows, or your workflows. Under documentation, you can clearly see that the one that I utilize all the time is the metadata document generator. Now, this can be used for more than just documentation purposes. Let me show you. There are a few clicks over here, but they're definitely worth the time. You'll start by loading your entities and then selecting a file path. The file path is something that you're probably going to end up creating for yourself. So I'll go and write accounts. As you notice, my file did not exist already. I just created one like this. I'm going to select my entity, and I'm not going to filter my attributes. The options that I select are include field level security, include requirement level information, and include attribute location and forms. I'll go ahead and generate my document. This is the way to show the entity that you just selected. You see the schema name, the description, and if you go to the table that gets generated here, you have your logical name, schema name, display name, attribute type, description, custom attribute, type, required level, if it's secured or not, form location, and then the additional data. I use this all the time to send, after I filter and clean it out, I send that to my client as documentation of what we built on their entities. Also, while I'm customizing, I'm able to know which fields I maybe don't want an advanced find or I want to make sure that are on the form. And so I also utilize this to help me know which fields to add on the advanced find or which to add or remove from views. I like to filter the form location here. So I'm able to filter out which fields are not found on forms, and I try to clean that up. When it comes to development and data, here are some of the tools that I'd like to talk to you about. The Fetch XML Builder is something that I utilize in order to build queries to help me with my Power Automate flows. I'm not an XML query master, but I definitely benefit from this tool as it's more user-friendly. The Ribbon Workbench is also something in the development area that I've recently started using, because I previously would download I would import the solution into my environment, but now they have a tool in the XRM Toolbox. So it's just easier and it's not an extra managed solution in your environment. The auto number manager, I don't use as often because there are ways to utilize the out-of-the-box numbering now in the system. But the auto number manager does allow you to have a prefix and have a certain, character limit, and it's quite flexible. As far as data is concerned, there is a record counter that I really enjoy because it helps have an idea of how big your database is. And maybe if you're doing migration, I really like to have a check and balance on where we are with the records. I have recently discovered this new tool called Datamonger, and it's absolutely great to generate some fresh data when you're wanting to test and you want your system to look full. If you've ever attempted to manage end-to-end relationships, they're a bit of a pain when it comes to importing the data and loading all those tables because they're interdependent. This tool is great. You can utilize a flat Excel spreadsheet, write all your combinations over, and then when you import that within the tool, it puts in your data very neatly in your system. And let's not forget the bulk delete tool. There again, migration. When do we not have to bulk delete? This is a great tool. And this is my last slide. We have customizations and configuration. Obviously, I spent most of my time in these areas. And as you've noticed, a lot of the categories prior to this already talked through customizations and configurations. But these are just a few of the main ones I utilize in those categories. For customization, the clone field definitions is at the top of my list for 51 points. This is used all the time. Maybe you're wondering how this could be applied to something. Let me show you. I'll go ahead and close all the other windows so we're not too cluttered. I'm going to filter to my customization and remove the documentation filter. As you know, it kind of filtered both of them at the same time. This tool allows me to select a field from one entity and create that field on a different entity. If I go to contact, and then I go to account, it shows me all of the fields that are on contact that are not on account. So these are all available fields for me to move, to copy over. If I look at my new field that I created yesterday, I see here that I'm identifying my cat's name on my contact, because why wouldn't I want to know my contact's cat's name? And then my client says, absolutely, that's wonderful. I love that I'm capturing them at the contact, but really it matters for the account, because the account is the household of that person. Because we're doing veterinary services, we might as well have the cat's name on the account as well. So there's a requirement for me to create the exact same field I have on my contact on the account record. So what I'm doing is I'm coming in here, selecting it, and clicking on clone selected fields. Success. This is very helpful with dates mainly, because it allows you to create it, let's say, at the opportunity level and have that exact same field on your quote, on your order, possibly your opportunity product, your quote product, your order product. You can even go to invoice and invoice product if you so desire. But what I'm trying to say is a lot of these properties and a lot of these fields that you've created specifically for one entity can easily be cloned to another entity, another table with the click of a button. So I use this all the time. Under configurations, I cannot talk through this whole XRM toolbox without talking about the user settings utility. Hands down, every project is going to be using this. This is mainly something that we teach the SME account manager on the client side, because then they can manage it going forward. But what we do usually is select all of the users and have main settings defaulted. Most of the time, you're going to want to do the currency over here to US dollar. And you are going to want to see the records per page over here to 250. Otherwise, it defaults to a much lower number. And that's it. You can then update your user settings. Voila. Thank you so much for attending my session at DynamicsCon. It's been such a pleasure to be here with you today and share all of my tips and tricks for the XRM Toolbox productivity tools. Stay tuned for the live Q&A. And thank you for attending this DynamicsCon. It's been a pleasure. Hi, everyone.
Hey.
Thanks for joining us. Hey, Justin. How you doing today?
Good, Audrey. How are you?
Doing great, thank you. I see we've had some great conversations in the chat.
Can you hear me okay?
I sure can, yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
All right, perfect. All right, so Justin is my moderator, so what do we got coming our way?
So a lot of our guests have actually been answering each other's questions really well. One person had a question, how do you know if your tools are up to date?
Yeah, there's a section whenever you go and look at the plugins library. There's a drop down on the top right that allows you to see, plugins maybe that you want to filter through the ones that need to be updated. But most of the developers are pretty good at when you open up that tab on its own, it does tell you, hey, you probably want to update that, or you can do that in bulk as well through the plugins page. I think they also get highlighted like green or bold, let you know that you might want to update it. Also, I think someone else had mentioned how they did not have the latest version of the toolbox with the categories. It's always better to keep it on auto update. That's one of the settings as well under options that would actually keep the whole toolbox tool like updated and up to date.
Yeah, that's really good. Chad has a question about configuring MFA, which I know has been something that I personally have struggled with.
I have not found a tool for MFA configuration, but please, if anyone does know of one, I'd love to hear it.
Root Toshiro asks, is there any tool that helps create or load a new list box attribute?
A list box, like a field? Or a bot, like a... What was the question I'm trying to see?
Root Toshiro, do you want to elaborate a little bit on your question?
In the meantime, I think there is someone that was asking about data imports, and I touched a little bit on it. I mean, of course, now they have, online Excel that's just like easily right away. You can do it from CE. You don't even have to use an extra tool. But the data transporter is one that I do really like because you get to transfer data from one environment to the other. Otherwise, I haven't really found another tool that's better than just the out-of-the-box, Excel import. However, there is another tool that I had just found that I mentioned in my video that helps you generate like fake data. So then you can just upload that. It's really, really neat because you don't have to come up with names and addresses and combinations of colors and opportunity names. So you can kind of type that all in and it could update it for you. So I thought that was pretty neat, but I have not personally used it. I just got really curious when I was going through the list of plugins preparing for the session, and downloaded quite a few just to pay attention to like the newer tools out there. But that's something that I like to do on a regular basis, is just go to that plugin store and see, hey, what have I missed? Are there new things out there? That's always really fun. And also have to say that a lot of those tools did not come from me necessarily. I reached out to my coworkers in a blast fashion, and I said, hey, let me know, what do you use? My functional coworkers, my technical coworkers, and got some feedback from them as well. So hopefully this was helpful. All right, so Debbie was asking about if the tools are up to date. That's what I just said. Heidi was also mentioning that the personal user views migration is really good. I totally agree with that, because when you get to the realm of personal views, charts, and dashboards, it's just a black box out there. So that tool allows you to be able to move those over to the various environments, so your users can still like you when you do migration and you do an upgrade with them. And then you said attribute manager. Yes, attribute manager. You get to do bulk updates on your attributes. I believe you can also bulk create attributes. That's always helpful when you want to do, let's say have made sure the descriptions are filled out, or you want to turn on or off some features on your fields. So that's very helpful as well. I agree. And I'm not up to date on the comments. So let me go back to that sheet. I think we're having some issues with Justin syncing in. Are you back, Justin? All right, let me scroll through those questions here, and feel free, people, to keep having questions. Okay, Stacy, do you know if there are any plans for Microsoft to integrate some of these tools into the platform? I don't believe so, because part of the beauty of this is that there are a lot of it's like an open area for developers to come up with their own tools, and Microsoft really relies strongly on their partners. I mean, they don't implement necessarily as well. They rely on their partners to implement. So I don't believe that's going to be going away. The toolbox has been here as long as I've been in CE, since 4.0. So I don't think it's going away. But yes, some of these tools are always being integrated in the platform. If you think of PCF controls, it's the same idea, because Microsoft does have various plans and enhancements that they want to make to the system, and so sometimes our ideas are also Microsoft's ideas. Not sure who gives the idea to who, but yes, I have found myself not needing to go to the tool anymore because some things are doable in C specifically. A good question. Marcus, is there any tool to transfer option sets? Do you mean, Marcus, I think I'll need a little bit more details, because an option set is something that you can usually have inside of your solution. Or do you mean the data if you're building like a supporting entity, and that way it would be like the data transporter? But maybe just give me a bit more, context around that. That'd be great. Heidi, change field types and attribute manager. Yes, to use at your own risk. I don't know that I would want to use that. I'm always a little bit cautious when the toolbox supports something that is not supported in the actual platform, because then I don't know what kind of repercussions that's going to have long term. And most of my clients, and all of my clients, have multiple tiered environments. So if I make that change in dev, I need to make sure that it's happening in test, stage, prod. And probably would not venture to do things that are not usually supported, but that's just my cautious self. But yes, that is, some people do get some magic there, like changing field types. Chad, yes, Chad, absolutely. Now there's a native way to manage auto number. So that's one of the ones, as one example of a tool that Microsoft incorporated. Catherine, we're posing this question. Thank you. About the data transporter tool. Is there a way to align those fields after the fact? My GUID are not the same for fields across my environments, and it's such a pain to update each time I make changes in a solution. Let me read that one more time. Align those fields after. No, I'm sorry. When it's created, the GUID of that field, it cannot be changed. It can't be updated. So you'd have to really remove that from your environment and then do the transporter later to have the right GUIDs flow through. Another way to do that without the tool, though, is you can always, with the Excel spreadsheet, you can copy the GUID from one environment to another on creation, not an update. But you can utilize the export spreadsheet, those hidden columns on the left-hand side, those do have the GUID in them. And so there is a way to map that back to another environment to have the same GUID everywhere. You'll want to save that file as a CSV so that you can do your manual mapping to the GUID, though. So good question. Loss of data. Yes, I'm sorry, Heidi. that's how it works. So Marcus, thank you for the details here. You said option set values rather than putting it in a solution. Use the solution transfer utilities. Yeah, it depends how big of a change that is. I mean, if you're just working through, if your version control isn't so tight, if your solutions are pretty small, or if it's just a quick fix, you could definitely do that. I mean, if it's a real option set, I mean, the values are stored within the customization, like it's part of a solution. So you can use a solution transfer utility that would work. Yeah. You're welcome, Catherine. All right, Justin, have I missed other things? Trying to catch up here.
Sorry, can you hear me okay?
Absolutely, yes.
Sorry, I've been having some like weird internet issues. I'm not sure if my internet connection is up to this task right now.
I think maybe your
It
dog
seems like
chewed
it's
the
doing a little
wire.
bit better. Yeah, probably. So just to answer a question earlier about MFA, the best way to connect using MFA with XrmToolbox is when you go to connect. So like if you'll go to XrmToolbox and you click new connection, you want to click SDK login control. And then it will bring you up a new page. And then at the bottom right corner, there will be an open SDK login control. If you do that, and then you choose Office 365, assuming that you are on the cloud and you're not on-prem, then it will actually let you log in using your normal Office 365 login. You could just do show advanced, display a list of available organizations, and then sign in with your Office 365 login. And it will actually do any kind of MFA that you need to, like sending your phone a text message or any of that.
Great. And I feel like there's one more question that we missed, and that is from Root to Shiro. You're asking us if there's any tool that helps create or load a new list box attribute. So I'm going to assume that by list box attribute, you mean like an option set. So you want to load the values in your option set. And then after that, you probably want to like update your data with that option. I'm going to assume that's what you're asking. If not, feel free to type it in here. So as far as creating your option set, you use any of the attribute creator tools. So you can, I think one of them is attribute editor. So there's a few ones that you can utilize to create your field. And then after that, it's a two-step process. Then you use another tool to update your data or to create data with that option, with those new values. Or you can just do bulk updates and see that's almost as fast as, you know, using a tool for that. So Justin, I don't know if you saw that question, but if you wouldn't mind making sure that your details are in the chat to make sure that, you know, Leslie's URL and Chad's comments are all encompassing to what you just said for everybody else on the line. Great. We knew what you meant, Chad. You're good.
Yeah.
You're reading it on the screen. It says Jesse. Totally fine. No, I'm really thankful that you guys attended our session because the XrmToolbox is something that has just been the thing that I'm always the most excited about as a functional person myself, because I'm dabbling into a little bit of the, you know, the query building when I'm, you know, bugging Justin because he's my technical go-to, and I'm like, hey, how do I do this? Or, you know, I need to hack some XML, or I'm having some dependency issues with the solution. I just go to Justin. But when Justin's not available, I go to my XrmToolbox. And I just feel like there's always some new tools to communicate and to share together, especially in this community of Dynamics. I feel everyone always has something to bring to the table. And I just feel like it also helps collaboration. So if you guys have any other comments or thoughts, like, feel free to put them in this chat. We'd love to have everyone else hear what you love. But if we don't have another question, I think that's going to be it for us today. Had a bit of a shorter session, but it was such a great opportunity for me to present, and really thankful to be here at DynamicCon. Thank you so much, Justin, for being my moderator and for showing up for me today. And we'll see you all at Justin's session tomorrow, and I'll be his moderator. So hopefully you guys all show up as well. And he's going to be talking about the basics of technical. What, Justin? Why don't you just tell us what your session is about? So it sounds more intelligent.
So my session will basically just be going over like the basics of technical development within Dynamics CE. So if you want to learn a little bit about what goes into technical development, then I strongly encourage you to come join my session. And if you know any junior devs, anyone who's wanting to get into technical development, then send them to my session too. And hopefully I'll have some of my internet issues worked out by then.
You'll have to come
Thank
into
you,
the
everyone.
Thank you.